Alright, hope you all got to enjoy some unpheasant or a non-meat option if that's your thing. We continue where we left off with the crew pressing Ristal. She puts on this forlorn expression that tells us a lot before she even tells them anything. We switch to the ubiquitous Horizons backstory mode with a letterboxing screen. Like a movie, we start with Ristal on the run to create that instant intrigue and sense of urgency. It is cinematic with the sharp outlining, framing, vibrant colors like a short film. Lucius stands there, cloaked and shrouded in mystery, watching Ristal with her first baby, Terapagos. I feel like he really went out of his way for this dramatic entrance. There are a few hymns in this universe, and Lucius casually throwing out Rayquaza adds him to the list. That is one way to break someone's spirit, then he's all, I guess they just didn't want to battle. Ristal just bumping into Lucius is how Pokémon and Rayquaza met. Kinda adorable to see how Goth Rayquaza became Terapagos' first friend of the 6 heroes. As Ristal has the Scarlet Book in her possession, it seems like she was doing some life-risking research into the Terra Turtle. It all compounds as Lucius explains his mission to find Laqua, to see the exotic Pokemon and what else it has to offer. Like I thought, it was a travel bug that brought them together. Somewhat unfortunately, his capture of the other heroes happens in slideshow form. In fact, we didn't see how he met Rayquaza either. With how much is jam-packed in this episode, as well as already having seen the heroes be caught, maybe they didn't feel like that was time necessary spent here. Although, I easily think this episode could have been a two-parter. We could start with Ristal finding Terapagos, expand on the hero catches, see more of the group dynamic. So, the duo make their way into a tavern and Laqua comes up. The patrons give them a hard time and it gives me Jaya vibes. The crew being like, we're headed for an island in the sky. And everyone's like, well that sounds kinda stupid. Then Nami pops off on them the way Ristal does. I feel like this group fulfills that shonen dreams bigger than life area. Since Liko's goals really aren't that lofty. She's not trying to master or conquer anything, like she really just wants to go somewhere. In the same pub as Gibeon, who's taking Laqua as serious as anyone. You also can't be a potential villain without a scroll. Seeing how they got the same goal, Gibeon's assimilated into the group. With that, the explorers are formed and the third wheel is assembled. Like Lucius, Gibeon casually busts out his absurd monster, and a new Pokeball at that. It looks pretty old-fashioned, maybe that has to do with what kind of Pokemon it's good for, ancient ones and whatnot. Or maybe it just looks cool. Also similar to Lucius, we don't see how Zygarde and Gibeon met, but unlike Lucius, this seems to be the only Pokemon Gibeon has. Much to the brand, we spend just a bit of time seeing them explore. Again, where I could see this as a two-parter, I really wouldn't mind expansion on their adventures. I mean, this is likely the only time we'll see them together like this. I remember saying in the very beginning that their name is just not threatening. It's certainly no Team Magma. Though this trio wasn't intended to be a threat, just a group with some wanderlust. Initially, it seems like there's some seemingly random cameos from legendaries such as Latios and Latias, Terrakion, the legendary birds. It's interesting that Horizons treats legendaries kinda casually, giving Liko a handful, coupling them with Bidoof, though they still manage to maintain that mystique. Each encounter feels like an event. Although, why do they hang here? I mean, outwardly, Laqua doesn't seem too different from the million other forests we've trekked through. Well, other than the crystal surrounded by the ominous mist. At this point though, it seems mostly inactive, other than upsetting Pogogo like when Spinel whipped it out. This here highlights the difference between Lucius and Gibeon. Lucius wanted to see what Laqua has to offer. Gibeon has a plan. Gibeon seems inclined to investigate these materials, shows you how he could end up at Exceed as a science bro. Uncertainty over the Lacorium's energy activity prompts Lucius to want to leave, and Ristal, who's kinda just tagging along, agrees. On the other hand, Gibeon doesn't seem pleased by that idea. Major atmosphere of I've come too far. Ristal and Lucius somehow end up separated from him, and it really seems like they put too much trust in his character. An eruption occurs and Gibeon's absent. Lucius leaves Ristal behind, but shows foresight of the danger to come. Ristal follows along, and I will say I don't think she's adding that much to this story other than telling it. She is Terapagos' partner and the arbitrator of exposition. Lucius confronts Gibeon, who we can assume caused the explosion and has gone mad from the energy. Gives both people and Pokemon something like a Pokerus. The monsters around them rampage, but for some reason Terapagos and Rayquaza aren't affected. It isn't just legendary since neither is Cleavor. It did affect Terapagos when Spinel used it before, so maybe it was more concentrated? The Lacorium is actually tearing Laqua apart. Whatever kept it stable, Gibeon undid it and it seems unknowingly. Lucius's mons released themselves, empathetic to how he feels. Entei also just seems like a regular one, so I guess that puts the gouging fire theory to rest. Seems him and Fire were especially close. It reminds me of it tearing up at the thought of him. Gotta appreciate these small interpersonal displays. The heroes make their offense against the crystals, and while aesthetically pleasing, it's ultimately ineffective. Even Rayquaza can't overpower it, and that's currently the strongest Pokemon in Horizons. Zygarde releases a whole bunch of squishies that latch onto the crystals. The way its cells separated seems like it was in defiance of Gibeon. That also shows us why it's presently in 10% form. A crater opens, swallowing Gibeon into the Shadow Realm, and I did get a kick out of that being only a split concern. If he survived that fall, could the Lacorium have strengthened his body like the Pokemon? Will we eventually be in for a Gibeon flashback that unravels that? Triggered by this battle, Terapagos goes stellar, so the Lacorium likely has inherent terrestrial energy. It engulfs engulfs the other heroes along with the detonating crystals and Lucius. Despite Ristal's pleas, Lucius decides to sacrifice himself for the sake of the future. 2 now swallowed by the mist, could his body have been powered up to survive the impact or guarded by the cells? Out from that burst released the pendant, an accident or what I believe was an order from Lucius. With that, Lucius protected Paradise. Possibly a homage to the 8th movie sacrifice as well, seeing as how Lucario and Lucius are both voiced by Daisuke Namikawa. Okay, so how did Lucius and Ristal have time to find an egg? I had mentioned that trust they put in Gibeon, finding this stranger, getting lost in the excitement and bringing him along. Unfortunately, it seems like that trust may have cost Lucius his life. Though, if he lived, I wonder if he and Gibeon encountered each other after Ristal left. As they try and pry more info from her, it seems her time's run out. Looks like she purposefully kept Diana in the dark and remained in it herself too. So it is a bit heartwarming to see her get some closure where everyone is now. The last thing she says is Lucius, so she still longs for him, meaning I think he's still alive. At first, Ristal lost Terapagos, and now it's the other way around. Terapagos, saddened and limp, seems to understand that Ristal's gone, and it seeks comfort where it has been all along. Freed, the Pokeball dispenser, seems to understand. The way Liko pays her respects to Ristal and her family who have paved the way for this adventure and this catch, the piano. I'll admit, my eyes used Splash. Maybe that's clownable, but now, Terapagos, get Todaze! It has just been so long since I got to do that. 9 months! It has been long enough to make Layla since Tinkatink's catch. Better late than never. Earlier than expected, Diana departs from them. Perhaps she's just impressed by the person Liko's becoming from her own adventure. Although brief, I'm fulfilled if Grandma episodes are as special as this one. Her and Wendy cut through the wind and leave the Volt Tacklers to plan their next endeavors. Liko's like, to reach Lucius and Laqua, worries about finding and catching the other heroes. And Dot will be there to stream it. While Free doesn't know exactly where they're off to next, he's ready to figure it out. Meanwhile, at Exceed, Spinel seems farther ahead in his plans. I assume he's looking into the info Chouse gathered at the Academy. How to power up his Pokemon without them going out of control is my guess. He can also learn from Gibeon's mistakes, who seems to be enjoying a good nap. What an episode. Let's start with Ristal. She connected Terapagos with Lucius, and she's Liko's ancestor. That said, I still feel like her contributions to this backstory were weak. She just didn't have the same grandiose moments the others did. Although her departure, the fact it wasn't exactly a happy ending, I can appreciate that. That's just rare in a series like this. As for Liko's long-anticipated catch, people have long awaited a new catch from the trio, but with this, it just doesn't feel like anything's changed for her team. Since it hasn't, it could be worth it if she used Terapagos in battle, but I feel we're still a ways away from that, so it seems like it'll be delayed gratification. I wrestle with A or B, since there are some areas I would have liked expanded upon, though I would be surprised if this was our last Laqua backstory. Plus, they did pack a ton of action, emotion, and exposition into this small window, so with how unique this episode is, I would have to give it an A.